Hello and welcome back to OmniFoot TV. This is your host Omar speaking, and today I will be reacting to the news that Nuno Espirito Santo is going to be leaving Wolverhampton Wanderers at the end of the season. This piece of news absolutely floored me. I was talking to a friend earlier before I decided to get up and shoot this video, and he said to me he could have been their Sir Alex Ferguson. And just the thought of that, my first reaction was that modern day football would not let him. And I find it sad that that was my very first thought. Now, apparently, the reason he is leaving is because there has been a rift between him and the hierarchy of the club. The owners want to bring in one of two Portuguese managers whose names I currently forgot. So just don't mind me because I'm not necessarily sure of the reports. But it would make sense for them to actually bring in a Portuguese replacement because of the Portuguese identity of the team. Nuno has been described as a fiercely uncompromising individual. And he was dismayed at the hierarchy's summer transfer window dealing plans ahead of the upcoming summer. He felt that they did not necessarily represent what he wanted at the club. And I don't blame him for being frustrated. Wolves have finished lower than they did in the past two seasons. They had secured 2 consecutive 7th placed finishes in the Premier League ever since coming back up. Wolves have enjoyed a certain kind of success that very few clubs have seen, because it isn't just a kind of success built on numbers or on reaching on overcoming certain obstacles. It has been built on the identity that Nuno has forged at the club. People joke about how Wolves have this Portuguese spine and how Wolverhampton Wanderers have basically become the Portuguese national team. But to be honest, you look at these players and you can pinpoint who they are. You know? When I was growing up and I was watching Chelsea, when I looked at the likes of Petr Cech, John Terry, Ashley Cole, Frank Lampard, I knew who these players were. When I watched Manchester United, I looked at Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Wayne Rooney. I knew who these players were. You know what I mean? These are players who they give more meaning to the shirt. They have given the badge a certain value and raised the standards to a certain level that have reinvented what it means to play for that club. And that is exactly what these players have done at Wolves under Nuno Santo. And it's a shame that he's going to be leaving. They've seen such brilliant moments under his management, and it's been only 4 years, mind you. He took them up from the championship with an impressive tally of 99 points. He put together a very good team. And I was just watching the highlights of their game against Cardiff. I saw one of the comments. A Wolves fan had said, the last 5 minutes of this game had shaved off 5 years of my life because of how stressful they were. And if you're not familiar with that game, Wolves were 1-0 up thanks to a Ruben Neves free kick. Who else? And thanks to none other than Mike Dean, they gave away 2 penalties in added time. No, like the first penalty and the second had less than a minute between them. And the first one was saved by John Ruddy. The second, Junior Hoylett hit the crossbar. And as soon as the whistle blew, right after that, Nuno and his players, Nuno made the run to his players in front of the opposition's fans at Cardiff Stadium. And they celebrated, realizing that they had secured Premier League promotion. And that was iconic. Watching Nuno make that run. And having to watch him earlier take off his jacket, toss it off, kick something, because the camera, the visuals, the frame wasn't really showing me what exactly he had kicked, but he was irate. So to have done that, and then to be running onto the pitch, expressing victory a couple of minutes later, that's one insane turn of events. And then you have their FA Cup win against Manchester United, which took them to Wembley in the 2018-19 season. They won that game 2-1. Jimenez scored a great goal after a very quick turn. And I think the second goal was scored by Diogo Jota. A very good finish as well. I'm trying to remember all this, and I followed them. I looked at this team, and I remember certain signings that they made just caught me off guard completely. I remember when they signed Moutinho for Monaco, and that to me was just a statement of intent, if any. Moutinho was a player who he's one of Portugal's best midfielders. He is someone who has been integral to the Portuguese setup. He won the Euro with Portugal. He was playing in the final. He was integral for Porto. He was integral for Monaco. Played Champions League football for them. And then he goes to Wolverhampton. That was a shock to me. And their signing of Jimenez, who last season, by the way, scored 27 goals. I mean, that they just have this team. Rui Patricio, Podence, Pedro Neto, Ruben Neves, who was there since Nuno took over. Excuse me. And it's just mind-boggling how you just know these players, how they've developed this charisma of sorts, this personality, this attitude. They've given the shirt a new sense of relevance. They've given Wolverhampton a new sense of relevance. The first of its kind since they won the league under Stan Cullis. And if you don't know who Stan Cullis is, I would recommend that you do some research. He is their best ever manager. Led them to 3 league title wins. And just to give you some background information, Wolves are also 3 or 4-time FA Cup winners. I'll just check my notes to be sure. They are 3-time league winners, 2-time League Cup winners in the year 1974 and 1980. They're one of the founders of the Football League. Jeez, this is just... They have 4 FA Cups, their last one being in 1960. And they also reached the very first UEFA Cup final in 1972. Last year, they reached the semi-finals of the Europa League for the first time since that day. And you have to understand just how monumental it was for Nuno to come to the club and to turn its fortunes around so quickly. 4 years isn't a long time. Look at their win against Manchester City after beating Besiktas in Europe in 2018. And it's just that night against Cardiff, the game against City, the game against Olympiacos, which allowed them to qualify, thanks to Jimenez's penalty. I remember the period between the first and second legs was huge. They spent a lot of time in between. And then their win against Man City in the league. 2 quick-fire counter-attacks thanks to a single substitution. And who did he bring off? Patrick Cotron. A player who I couldn't even believe had joined Wolves because he was at Milan. That's right. Wolves loaned in a player from the mighty AC Milan. Nuno has pull. Nuno has pull. If that isn't obvious, I don't know what is. For a manager to have just turned up, led his team to the Premier League, finished in the top 10 for 2 consecutive seasons, got them to a Europa League semi-final, got them to an FA Cup semi-final, brought in a striker who scored 20 plus goals last season, a brilliant midfield. I mean, to me, Ruben Neves' goal against United last season at, I think it was at either Molineux, I can't remember if it was at Molineux or Old Trafford, just to be fair, but I will never forget that curler. He curled it right into the top corner, outside the box, which is trademark Ruben Neves. The fact that there is that trademark Ruben Neves expression explains just how unique and how wonderful that side was to watch. How much grit they had, and how you could just identify these players. It wasn't just tuning in to watch a team whose players you knew just because you read their names on the back of their shirts. No, you could tell who had the ball when they had it. And that was it to me. You know, there are certain players and certain teams that have graced the Premier League. Not necessarily some of the greatest teams. But if you're familiar with the term the streets don't forget, you get my point. Wolves are definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, one of those teams. And the fact that Nuno is such an uncompromising individual, as I have previously mentioned, in my humble opinion, adds more value to his success. Because, to be fair, there are certain things you shouldn't compromise on. And I think if it truly goes down to the fact that he and the hierarchy of the club just don't see eye to eye on transfers, that it is better to leave now before the ship starts falling apart on its own and the fans get frustrated with you. And I don't necessarily know if Nuno could possibly go back to Portugal. They say that if Conceição resigns as Porto manager, he could go back to manage Porto. But there is also word that he wants to stay in England. And I was asked earlier tonight if he would possibly manage Tottenham. To that, my answer is no, because he would definitely not get along with Daniel Levy. I don't necessarily need to say how bad of an owner Levy is. So I'll leave Tottenham for another video. But my point is, Nuno Santo is one of those managers who, if you love football, you have to appreciate this man. You have to appreciate this man for what he's done for the Premier League, to the team he's brought us in the Premier League. The one thing I love the most, I think, if not second to none on the list, when it comes to watching English football, is watching certain teams just show up after such an absence. You know what I mean? Watching that Swansea team under Brendan Rodgers and Michael Laudrup win the League Cup. How well they did in the Premier League. Their iconic games against Arsenal. And watching this Wolves team, their games against Manchester United and Man City. And it's just... And you have that Everton team from 2005. And I don't necessarily think you can add the current West Ham team under David Moyes, but I think there's a probability. You know, there are just these teams. There's the Bolton side from, I think, 2004. And it's... You could literally just list them. And it doesn't just happen in the Premier League. It happens everywhere else. You see this team, and they just show up, and they remind you why you love the game. They remind you how change can be a good thing. And I think that's an absolutely amazing thing. The fact that you can be reminded that change can be a good thing, be it in football or in life. And I think that works in tandem. I think that when you see that happen in something that you love and you cheer it on and you look forward to it. The Southampton team, the team that I can't necessarily remember the manager's name, but they had some really good players. Back when Adam Lallana was playing for them, they had Ricky Lambert. These teams, these teams who come up from nothing, or who come up from very difficult circumstances to the Premier League, who people don't get behind, the general public doesn't get behind, and then they shock you. I think the top tier, I think the team that basically holds first place is obviously Leicester for their Premier League win back in 2016. But apologies for digressing. You get the point, right? There are these teams, and Wolves is right up there. And I think it's fair to say that Nuno won't be gone for good. I think this is going to propel him to better things. No disrespect to Wolves at all. I just mean that if it happens, and I would assume that it might, if Fernando Santos were to leave his post as Portugal manager after the current Euros, I would honestly suggest that hiring Nuno would be the best thing the national team had done since winning the Euros. Because in my humble opinion, at the very least, Nuno is a much better manager than Fernando. But, I'm sure other people have other opinions on the matter. I'm just grateful. I am grateful for what Nuno has done at Wolves. I am grateful for his impact on the Premier League, his impact on the Championship, his impact on the Europa League, on the FA Cup. He gave the black and gold a new sense of life. People became optimistic. I'm not necessarily sure about what the people of Wolverhampton are like. Their demeanor, how they supposedly cheer their club on. Because, every community has its traditions, has its outlooks. They have certain characteristics that they go by. And I think that Nuno has just done such a brilliant job for them. Look at the job Bielsa has done at Leeds. Look at the job Eddie Howe did for Bournemouth. These people, these managers, these clubs that remind you that change is refreshing, that the paradigm has to shift, that competition in our sport matters. And I respect and admire Nuno for what he's done. And that's it for today's video. I would like to thank anyone and everyone for tuning in for however long you tuned in for. If you have any thoughts on any of the claims I've made, any of the opinions I have stated, please let me know what they are in the comments below. Like, share, and, subscribe, comment, and let me know your thoughts in general on the content. Any constructive criticism is welcome. The links to our social media accounts are in the description below. And I thank you all for watching. Also, if you can, let me know your favorite moments watching Nuno's Wolves. I'd appreciate it. It would actually mean a lot. Just thinking about how other people who were possibly neutrals saw Nuno's team, not just necessarily Wolves fans. Because I think we'd all have something to talk about. And with that, I bid you all adieu. As the French say. I was never any good at French. Thank you all for tuning in. And I will see you next time the whistle blows. Cheers, everyone.